Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stogie Geeks Show. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is, of course, the Stogie Geeks Show, episode 19. I'm here with, I'm, of course, Paul Asadorian, and I'm here with my illustrious co-host, Mr. Tim Muggerini. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Hello.
And we have a very special guest in the studio for this first segment, which we're going to get right into, since it ties into the cigars we're smoking, and our very special sponsor, Mr. Paul Joyal himself is here, the owner and operator of Mr. J's Havana Smoke Shop, also lovingly called Joyal's. He has created a new company, well, a relatively new company, right? Ocean State Cigars, which distributes premium handmade cigars such as the J Grotto Series and the J Grotto Reserve. He's here tonight with us to talk about the blending process and his new cigar called Silk. Is it the Silk or is it Silk?
Just J Grotto Silk.
Silk.
Just Silk.
Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hello, Tim.
And again, thank you for sponsoring us. All of us here at Stogie Geeks and our listeners greatly appreciate that. And many of them have been calling your store, begging everyone for premium cigars that we talk about on the show. So,
Indeed. Absolutely.
it is. It's nice to have you here and talk about your cigar and something that I'm very interested in: the blending process, the information about the leaves, and whatnot. Now, you've been doing cigars for how long?
I've owned my own cigar shop now for 16 years, and about 2.5 years ago, we took the plunge, and I wanted to go into my own blending and come out with my own brand. I felt I had built other people's brands from start,
Right.
and figured I'd take a shot at it myself.
Excellent, excellent. So why the J Grotto in the name? I mean, when you came out with your first cigar, I remember you got that question a lot. I wanted to make sure our listeners heard a little of the story behind the brand.
It's a cool story. It's actually a cool story, and it's dead on accurate. The J, that's my last name, Joyal. So I wanted the J on there. The Grotto, that came from just a little saying that came along about 7 or 8 years ago. As you know, you've been to the lounge many times. You've discussed it on this show here. Full capacity, even with the door outside and the bistro tables outside. It's probably 15 people at best. Yeah. It was perfect night, warm night. We had about 15 people there, and it was so packed. And I said, you know what, guys, let's just go to my house. I don't live that far from here. As I was telling Tim earlier, I don't know if it's a good idea, but it actually turned out to be a good idea. You don't usually want to bring your customers to your house.
Yeah, this is true.
Did your wife agree?
I don't think I told her.
We kind of just showed up.
She was in a window looking out. She saw a bunch of cars pulling up. But like I said, we went there. We went to the pool area. You've got your little man cave here. Well, I've got my man cave in the back. My pool house and pool's about 150 feet in the back of my property, and my wife does all the landscaping, and she's really into gardening. And
you are an artist too, right?
She's an artist, so she's into contour, beds and stuff, and mulch and flowers, exotic flowers. Everything came together perfect. I think it was either late June or maybe early July. Every flower was in bloom.
Yeah.
It looked like a Japanese garden, or I should probably say an Italian grotto. That's where someone happened to mention it. He said, it looks like an Italian grotto here. We had a water fountain back there.
Yep.
And it just, what I thought would be a one-time thing, the next week, lo and behold, they want to know if we're going to have a grotto
What time
night.
we going over your house, Paul?
Yeah, what time we go? We having a
You know what they
grotto
say
night?
about the kid with the pool, right? He's the most popular.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, we started doing it maybe once a month. I probably spent 3 months trying to think of a name of on the internet, on Cuba, trying, Googling every town. That's where most of the names and brands come from.
I noticed that, yeah.
Santa Clara, Trinidad, Cabawan. It just goes on and on. And about 2 in the morning, I just woke up one night, and it just hit me. It was like, Grotto. They're always asking me to have a Grotto night. Why not just Grotto? The heck with it. Row my own boat. Let's go forward with it. And it's caught on.
Nice. So we're going to, I guess I want to kind of focus on the new cigar, the Silk, tonight. And then when we do different shows and bring you back on, we'll talk about some of your other cigars.
Sure.
But since we're all smoking the Silk now, and it's your latest blend, and you've been handing out samples to everyone, I thought we'd focus the conversation around the Silk. And my first question is revolving around the country where all of the tobacco comes from, or if there's multiple countries used in your cigar, and specifically this blend. Where does the tobacco come from?
Actually, this cigar is multiple countries. The wrapper itself is a Connecticut shade, but grown in Ecuador. I just love that.
I'm sorry. So we had this conversation before. The seeds come from Connecticut.
Yes.
And they grow the plants in Ecuador.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And that's what they call an Ecuadorian Connecticut.
Ecuadorian grown Connecticut shade.
Connecticut shade.
So
they still shade. They still
shade use
it. Okay.
cheesecloth. They do everything they do right
Gotcha.
here in South Windsor, Connecticut.
Yep.
It's all cheesecloth, but it's grown in Ecuador, a little different climate. And it's a different wrapper, and it's a lot more flavorful.
They become very popular.
They
as
are,
of
yeah,
late, and
yeah.
Paul and I have talked a great deal about cigars we really love with this wrapper.
With this wrapper, yeah,
The
absolutely.
San Cristobal Elegancia, I believe, is one. The Camacho, Connecticut, is another.
Yep. It gives us some great
The
flavors.
Jaime Garcia Reserve.
Right,
that they
the New England release.
New England
that I reviewed.
release.
Very good. Excellent.
And so it's blended in. So the wrapper's grown in Ecuador, but then they blend it in Honduras, right?
Yes, everything is in Honduras, and it's in the Trojes region of Honduras. All the cigars come out of the Raíces factory, and like I said, this cigar was a very, very interesting blend.
Yeah, tell us about the binder and the filler.
Myself, my son Tom, and a frequent flyer here, Cigar Santa, I think you call him. Mark?
Stogie Santa.
Stogie Santa.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mark. Stogie Santa. Mark and I and Tom worked on this for a while to just get the right taste. I didn't want something mild, but I've got two other blends. I've got one that's already on a strong side. I got one that's on a medium. Yep. And we just wanted to have something in a mild to medium with a lot of flavor. And I think we hit it here. And
so the binder is interesting. It's Indonesian.
We've got this cigar has two binders.
Oh, okay.
There's an Indonesian binder and a Criollo 98 binder, double binder.
Now, what's the purpose of the double binder? Is it flavor, or is it burn and construction, or?
I think it's a combination of all of them. It seems. When you put that double binder, speaking of
Stogie Santa, Stogie Santa's in the house, everyone.
Stogie Santa's in the house. But when they put that double binder, it really it makes it burn really well. I don't know if anybody can see. I'm smoking a prototype Lancero.
They can see, yes.
And they can see it. I mean, it just burns beautifully. And like I said, in the blend in here, we've got that Honduran Trojes tobacco, some Nicaraguan Jalapa.
I'm sorry, so go back to the Criollo. Now, that's a kind of plant, correct? Of a Criollo plant?
Yes.
And so in your case, the plant is grown in Honduras?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a Honduran Criollo 98. What's the 98 signify?
You know what? They've always talked about that. 98, they started with that originally, and that wasn't.
No, what the Criollo 98 is a Cuban hybrid seed because regular Criollo.
I got it for you.
Hold on, Stogie Santa. You're not getting away from not being on mic.
Test.
They did away with Corojo, and they went to.
Get the deal on the 98 representation of
The
the Criollo.
Criollo 98 is a hybrid seed that the Cubans use because before the regular Criollo had a lot of problem with the blue mold, hence the 98. And that way there, it gives a lot more yield, a better quality type of. It's a great wrapper on that cigar. That's what just stands out. in my mind, is that 98. Really
Nice.
does.
Now, every one of those Cuban cigars used Corojo, but it was such a problem and a low yield on the wrapper, and that's when they went to that hybrid. I had forgotten about that, and they
Gotcha.
once they blended those, they got so much more yield, and it just gave a great wrapper.
No, so there's another binder which is Indonesian. That's interesting. You don't find that in a lot of cigars, right?
No, and I got to be honest, I'm not always the biggest fan of a lot of Indonesian tobacco, but it just really came together here. I've had some blends, and I'm sure you've smoked some before. Different cigars, we had some Peruvian tobacco in it, very small amounts.
Yep.
When you put something in it, it just sometimes marries into the tobacco, into the cigars, and it's just right. It may not work with something else.
It's very true.
So Stogie's saying it's grabbing a cigar over here.
My favorite one.
Yeah.
This is the favorite one of the line. The
Nice.
Corona
So now, Paul, the filler is Honduran, and how do you pronounce that? Troj
Trojes.
Trojes.
Hey, I pronounced something right. for once.
T-R-O-J-E-S.
Nice, very nice. Tim. I'm
Trojes.
proud of you. And is that just a particular region that they grow it
Yes.
in Honduras,
The
right?
Trojes region. Yeah, it's a small plot of land, and that's where my stuff comes from.
And Nicaraguan Jalapa, which is used in a lot of Nicaraguan-based cigars, right?
Yes.
So we talked about the farms it comes from, the primings on the plant, where on the plant it comes from, or the type of plants that all of the tobacco inside the cigar comes from. So, I mean, how did you come to choose all those different components? I mean, because we're talking about a wrapper, 2 binders, and 2 fillers. So how did you come to choose those different? I mean, did you know that certain flavors from each of those different plants or growing regions would produce a blend together?
Well,
like, how did you choose all of those?
It's trial and error.
It's trial and error. I mean, usually when we sample, there's always 3 of us. Mark, Stogie Santa, and my son Tom. We usually sit down and smoke. We knew what we wanted to go. We knew what the Connecticut Ecuadorian shade was going to taste like.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of working with the factory. We just told them we wanted something that was going to be medium-bodied. I didn't want that traditional mild. And they went from there. I mean, they sent us samples. How long did we work on this, Mark? 3 months.
That's on the low side.
Maybe more. Yeah, maybe 4 to 5.
Closer to like 6 months, I would say.
They would send us samples like 1 through 10, and we'd narrow it down to 6, and then they'd send more, and then we'd narrow it down to 3 or 4. This goes on, and it's like a 5 or 6 month process.
No, were they changing the binder and the filler? And like how much of each one will greatly affect the flavor, right?
The wrapper stayed the same, but they played with the filler,
right,
the filler tobacco.
How much of the Honduran Trojes and Nicaraguan Jalapa is in it, and things like that, right?
That's exactly what they did. They went with that. They switched it up a little bit, and it's trial and error. You've smoked cigars. I mean, how many of you had? Sometimes you smoke them, and then you literally sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And I think Mark remembers this really well. When we pulled the trigger on this, it was like, they brought us the samples. Quite frankly, the cigars weren't ready to be smoked. Remember?
Absolutely.
You remember they were green?
Yep.
And I'm gonna tip my hat here to a gentleman who's absolutely an incredible blender out in Honduras, at Rayasis, and that's Ralph Montero. Ralph literally talked to us and said, "Trust me, I've got it perfect." When you're pulling the trigger and you're putting a big order in cigars and you're smoking it and it's not ready, that's a leap of faith. And boy, did he hit the jackpot. But it needed some time.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think, Paul? Trying to figure out the blend differences in the silk blend as opposed to reserve it. Didn't you find that not tedious? What's the word I'm looking for? Trying, because with the silk, I found that the first thing I did when I did with the Lancero, I could taste that little bit of subtle difference, because being the Ecuadorian, it is what it is. But when you change up something on a mild cigar like that, I think it just popped bigger for me.
Yeah. Was it more difficult to blend a mild cigar than a stronger one?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? I would say trying. I would say tedious. All of the above. This is a cigar, and I think Mark will agree with me. he's not traditionally a mild to medium cigar man.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't what I normally smoke.
Right.
And I found it difficult. And I said, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm going to kind of lean on some other people a little more on this one. It was out of my range, but not out of my range, but it just was something that I normally didn't traditionally chase
No,
after.
when you're sampling, which sizes do they typically send you to sample in, and is there a reason for that?
It's our call. They ask us what size,
Yep.
and we just went with the best-selling sizes. Actually, I say that, and yet Mark and my son were always very, very big on Corona Extras.
Yeah.
And they've really turned me on to this smaller size a little more. And you know what? I just find the ratio of wrapper
Absolutely.
compared to the ring gauge
Oh,
and stuff,
yep.
it's a perfect marriage. Again, we're going to come out with a 6x60 ring. That's the most popular size in this country.
You
and
can't
yet-
deny it, right?
You can't
Right.
deny
You
it,
can say what you
but
like.
it's not something I smoke. And I just find myself going to some of the smaller cigars a lot more. I think the ratio of that wrapper and a flavor is just...
Oh, the Corona though, on the reserve is just, I think it's the hallmark of
It's
the
my favorite.
whole line. It just, every cigar is good. Don't get me wrong. But that cigar is it's incredible. It never fails me. Never. I mean, it's impeccable. It's impeccable.
So, Paul, how long is the tobacco aged before it's rolled, and then how long is it aged once it's all rolled into a cigar?
All of this tobacco, whether it be regular, the reserve line, the original, or this, everything's usually 3 years age.
From the time it's pulled from the plant, right?
Yeah, the tobacco. Well, actually, this tobacco was aged 3 years.
That's good,
Once we pull the blend and decide to go with the production, usually, by the time I get them, it's about 6 to 7 weeks once I placed my order. It takes about 3 weeks to get into the production cycle. I usually receive my product in about 6 to 7 weeks, but we never sell it at that point.
Yeah.
On the reserve line right now,
I remember you sat on them for a while.
everything we have right now has got 6 months age. On my original J Grotto, everything's got a year, and they are smoking totally different than when we first got them in. And
So it's 3 years from the time they pick them from the plant, and then they'll roll them and then ship them to you. Minimum 3 weeks, 6 months. You got to put on them
minimum
when they're
6 weeks
blended.
usually, 6 to 7.
Gotcha.
Is
Is there an art or science to like how long you age it? Do you think there's a difference between tobacco that ages before you roll it and tobacco that ages after you roll it? And I hear some people tell me, if two different kinds of wrappers are next to each other in my humidor and they're sitting there for a couple of years, that the oils will meld together. So if that's true, I would think that a cigar aged after it's rolled would present different flavors.
It does. You get different nuances that come through. I got to be honest with you. Most stuff that I smoke never has less than... I won't even smoke stuff a lot of times if it doesn't have at least a year after I've had it.
Yeah.
I'm in a situation I'm fortunate enough to be able to do it.
I find that if I go purchase a cigar and I let it sit in the humidor for a year, it's like a totally different experience. And I'll have a different experience than a lot of some other people say, well, I didn't care for that. And sometimes I really liked it. And maybe that's because it's sat in my humidor for a year.
Mark, how many times have we heard this in my store where someone says, we're closing a particular cigar out. It was always a good cigar, but for some reason it fell out of fashion. It just doesn't sell. And then people start buying it, and it's like, oh, my God, this is tremendous. It wasn't that it didn't taste good when we got them in.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you can take it from the root cause, and what I think is that you can let it age with what you want, but the most important part, and that's what Alex Bradley really comes in a lot, and all the big names too, is the fermentation. Because if you don't let that the fermentation correctly
Before it's rolled, right?
before it's rolled, if you don't let that ferment correctly,
You're done.
You can let it age for 5 years.
It's got to be fermented.
It's got to be
properly.
fermented properly. And just like we were kind of anxious, Paul was going to be on the road next week doing a big event. And I could see it in his face, a little disappointed. He wanted to present this. But, again, we heard it from another supplier saying, if it isn't ready, don't rush it. And it is what it is.
It's
you
ready
just can't do it.
when it's ready, and don't rush it. And this isn't my first rodeo at this point, so I will be patient.
Now, we're smoking the Silk now,
Yes.
and you gave me a sample of the Corona a while ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
I'm not sure how much age that had on it.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
What you're smoking now? No, those have age. Those,
Yeah, this one seems like it has more age than the one you gave me originally because I like this one
Agree
a lot better.
100%.
Yeah, those
yeah.
have. Yeah, the one you're smoking right now has age.
Yeah. I can tell you, I'm really liking this. It's a Ecuadorian Connecticut.
Yep.
I'm finding it very smooth. It's burning great and has great flavors.
It's got a touch of pepper on the retro, too. which
Just
I
a
like,
touch, though. I
which
mean,
like very
sometimes
slight.
they'll put, and I won't say the brand, but they'll put too much pepper in it. And for
Yeah.
me, when I want a mild Connecticut shade cigar, I don't want all that pepper because I'm smoking it first thing in the morning with coffee. I don't want to be overwhelmed with spice and pepper first thing
Not
in the morning. Yeah, not in the morning.
Not in the morning.
Now
And
that's
what-
it's try the excuse me, Paul. Try the Lancero. You can see there is, I think, a significant difference between that. The Lancero is really quite good. It truly
yeah,
is.
what I did today for you guys. These are the prototypes. I brought both Tim and Paul here.
The other guy.
A couple. The other guy.
The other guy.
I brought you a couple of the Lancero in the Reserve J Grotto Reserve line.
Oh, nice.
And you've got a couple Lanceros on the Silk. Haven't decided if we're going with the Silk yet. I want to see how this Lancero comes along.
I don't see a lot of Lancero in the Ecuadorian Connecticut. It's an
No.
interesting,
Yep.
I think, size and wrapper
It's true.
combination.
It's just something we're playing with. Here's one each for you,
Thank you, Paul.
and here's
Yeah,
one
thank
each
you very
for
much.
you, Paul.
Now, why is it that people
Now,
you
we
think? I
promised-
find that a lot of people don't really like Lanceros. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I think the true aficionado does like a Lancero, but it seems the new culture that come along. It seems they get more money, more bang for their buck with a
Absolutely.
60-ring cigar. And you know what? I have yet to have a 60-ring cigar that packs the flavor of a Corona, a Lancero, or God forbid, it's almost sacrilege to talk about a petite Corona today.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yet
I
they're
know.
incredible smokes. But people want that big 6x60 ring gauge cigar.
Great point.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of my next question was what size is the most popular and how do you determine which sizes your cigar will be offered in? Is that strictly based on sales? Is it based on what the blend is going to best be represented in a size? Is there something to the science behind what you've come up with for a blend and what size best represents that? Or do you tweak the blend according to the size in some
I
cases?
think it's a little of all of the above because you obviously are going to go with the most popular size on the market. But what we've done in the store here is we're not afraid to go out and go outside the box and go with something small.
Right.
Like we said, Lancero's on a big popular size. This Lancero that we're going to release probably in July is going to be a limited run. Maybe 1,000 cigars. That's
Yeah.
it, 100 boxes. 100 boxes of 10. And we're just going to run with that. And we feel confident enough with our staff in the store. We're going to hand sell these, and the people that know will buy them, and the ones that don't won't. But you know what? It's money in the bank, and truth of the matter is, to have these with maybe a year or two age, I don't think I'll have them that long, but
Right.
I know you'll come along asking me for them.
Yeah.
You're always sniffing around to see what's new.
So Paul,
what's old?
we read
What's old?
we read a lot of reviews about a lot of different cigars, and people will talk about they get bread and raisins and marzipan and all this crazy stuff. But if you had to describe the first the strength and then the flavor profile of the Silk, what would it be?
First of all, it's mild to medium. It's like I told you, we didn't want to go with something real strong that was going to knock somebody out. So on the regular Silk line, we wanted to fulfill another part of the market, which I did not have. People would always ask me, "Gee, this one's a little too strong. Do you have?" I'm a beginner. I'd like something a little more palatable. So we went with something mild to medium, and that's the direction we went there. We just didn't want to really. We wanted something mild, definitely mild for them. What was the second part of your question?
So what flavors? If you
The
had to describe
flavor?
the flavors,
Well, in my opinion, I find it. I get creaminess out of here. Very little spice. Very little spice. I I get a little bit of, I don't know, would you say cedar, a little bit of
I go
wood.
woody. Oh,
There's definitely there's woodiness in here. And you know, the thing is, it's a good wood. I didn't want something that was going to be so mild it was going to taste like cardboard or paper.
Yeah.
There's a woodiness on this, a little woody nuttiness that I think
Thank
comes
you.
through.
Nuttiness is what I'm getting, and I think that might be the Ecuadorian shade because I get that from a lot of Ecuadorian shades.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I'm really liking the Toro. This is the Toro side. Does it have a slight box press, or is that just an artifact of how it was shipped? Or
No, that it's going to be a regular round traditional cigar.
traditional Toro? Yeah. So
It's
what
just-
are the other sizes that you? I mean, so we talked about the Lancero and the silk that you're experimenting with. I've got the Toro size here. And now Tim, you've got the Torpedo.
That Torpedo is not in production right now. That was just something they sampled. You've had the luxury of sampling a couple other sizes.
I gotta be honest, I like it better than the Corona, and I'm typically a Corona guy. Maybe it's an age thing.
Possibly those they have age on them.
But yeah, this thing is smoking fantastic.
What we're going to release, and what's ordered, will be release that in roughly a month. I did want to come out with a Churchill, for the summertime. It's a mild smoke. I thought a Churchill would be a good size. We talked about it again. Most of these decisions, I'll be honest with you, I can't do everything anymore. I'm trying to run a wholesale division or a retail division.
Yeah.
And like I said, we sat down, Mark, my son Tom, and I, and decided we wanted to have a Churchill. We'd come out with a Grand Robusto, which is a 5x52.
Yep.
The Grand Toro, a 6x52. And, of course, the 6x60, which is now a staple of the industry. And
Churchill's a great golf cigar,
It's
especially in a mild
exactly.
smoke.
Yeah, and it's a great golf.
And
I
you know
think
what?
blend too.
You've got a little more in the summertime. You've got a little more time. You're at a
Yep.
cookout, so
Yep.
fire up a Churchill, and that's what we're going
Excellent.
with.
Now, a lot of people like to smoke a Connecticut shade wrapper, and a lot of people don't like it. I mean, what's your sense as to maybe why people aren't? They get turned off by the mild Connecticut shade wrappers. Why is that?
Well, you say that, but some of the greatest best-selling cigars in the industry today are very, very mild cigars. I mean, you look at the sales. The best-selling cigars in this country still are,
Macanudo, right,
medium and mild to medium. I mean, the true aficionado his taste buds have progressed, and he's smoking a lot more complex cigars. You guys do. I watch what you smoke all the time, but there is I think most people, the only people that don't like Connecticut wrappers, are the people that are smoking big, fairly complex, full-bodied cigars, and they just don't get enough flavor out of this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the mainstream market, they love this stuff. They love Connecticut.
I think there's in a region through the United States, people probably don't believe this, but the mild smoker is probably the largest audience that you do
Still
have.
largest segment.
No
Still
doubt
largest
about it.
segment.
You know what's funny? I was in the store earlier today, and I was listening to the gentleman said, I have a card game tonight, and I want some mild cigars, and I want some for myself and some to give to everyone else because, if they get overpowered with a cigar, they don't really enjoy it. They smoke one every once in a while they're playing cards. So I think this is a sure win in that department, given those demographics,
Absolutely. I want to, tip my hat to the staff over here at Stogie Geeks. You guys are very, very open-minded. You smoke everything. I know where your flavor range is, and realistically, if the beginner smoker smoked what you guys are smoking, you'd kill him.
Yeah.
You'd kill him. But you know what? You guys have such a tremendous palate. You can appreciate a mild to medium-bodied cigar.
Absolutely.
A different time of
But
day.
a lot of it comes down to me for time of day, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes I want to wake up in the morning. I usually do have breakfast. I very rarely take down a cigar before breakfast. Maybe I want to come out and I want to have a cigar and get a little work done first thing in the morning and enjoy a cigar with my coffee. And that's the times when you're reaching for those mild to medium bodied.
Ecuadorian shade is my go-to on Sunday
exactly.
morning coffee. It has been for quite some time. So
it is that way, especially in Europe. The European market is huge with, a Corona in the morning with a cup of coffee, something mild. At lunch, they build. If they smoke 3 or 4 cigars a day, they're not firing up a D4 or something in the morning.
Yeah.
They work a different cigar for a different type of day. You get, if you got an experienced palate, you nurture it.
So, Paul, I wanted to ask you. You've been collecting cigars for quite some time. You've had your own shop for some time, and what are some of the smokes that you've had over the years that have really stood out as being just unbelievably good? Like the ones that are just super rare, maybe, or that just kind of stand out to you. I mean, someone that I know you've got quite a collection. And, of course, the name of the show is Stogie Geeks, so we're all about the geekiness around cigars. So, what are some of the ones that really stand out for you as being awesome?
I got to tell you, the one that stands out right off the bat, I had just gotten into the business. I believe I'm going back to about 96 and 97. And I met a gentleman, actually, I forget, Goldman from Screw Magazine. What's his first name?
Al, isn't it?
Al Goldstein. Al Goldstein. And I happened to meet him because he was a good friend of someone that I knew. And I did him a favor, and he gave me 3 Monte number 2s.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when he gave it to me, they were still coming in cellar at that time. These cigars at the time were 22 years old.
Oh, wow.
The box was dated, and he gave me 3 of them. One of them I smoked immediately, and it just stood me up. It blew me away. I took the other one and put it aside. I said, when my son graduates high school, I'm going to fire that one up, which I did. And that one had about 25 years of age. And then
good thing he graduated. I want to smoke a cigar, damn it. You better graduate.
Listen, boy, you better get it together.
And then when my daughter graduated from high school, I smoked the last one. And that one had about 27 years of age. Those 3 cigars, I've never had anything that came close to those.
That's awesome. So now I wanted to ask you, with respect to the blending process, and this is the 3rd production cigar that you're releasing, did you work with the blender to say, hey, these are the cigars that I really like, to kind of get in tune with your flavor profile?
That's exactly how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
They gave us a checklist and, said, what are you looking for? Which cigars do you like? And, of course, you're not going to copy someone else.
Yeah, but
you give them a flavor profile.
Okay.
You really have to tell them what you're looking for. And it is it is really one-on-one. Because when they sent us the samples, they wanted to know what we didn't like about this one or why we like this one better.
I see. It's not just about what you like. You have to tell them, hey, I smoked number 3 of the 10 you gave me, and I didn't like X, Y, and Z about number 3.
Too much spice, not enough spice, not enough. I'm not a big fan of cigars, and it's just the style. And some of them, actually, the number 1 cigar of the year this year is an Alec Bradley Prensado Churchill. And yet that Prensado line has a tendency, for me, it dries my mouth a little bit. It's just the style that it is.
Yeah. I find it to be really earthy.
It's very earthy, but it dries my palate.
Now, that comes from a lot of the same farms where you're getting your cigars from, right? Alec Bradley is Honduras, right?
Yes.
And it's from the same manufacturer, right?
Same manufacturer. Like I said, same manufacturer. A lot of their stuff comes from Trojes, but it's a different blend.
It's a different
how
blend,
they blend those cigars together.
Because the factory, the cigars that the Grotto's coming out is the same as Illusion, the Viaje. So it's right up there as a premier factory.
They hit the jackpot this year. You talk about winning the World Series. They had the number 1 cigar of the year. They had the number 3 cigar of the year, which was I believe the Illusion La Toro.
Yeah.
And then they had another one in there. There were 3 in the top.
I can't recall. So
there's some Viajes on our list.
I think it was one of the Viajes.
That wasn't exclusivo, but anyway.
Oro. I think we might have been an Oro Reserva.
The Oro Reserva. 3 of the top
Reservas,
5
really
cigars all came out of Raíces. And
I think we're seeing it, and I heard the statistic that Nicaragua is now the number 1 exporter of tobacco, surpassing Dominican. And I think Honduran is definitely picking up steam in that respect as well.
Big time.
In a big way.
I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but Honduran cigars are a monster right now, as Nicaragua.
Now, the question I got for you, Paul, is do you see the industry switching, or not switching, I'll rephrase that, changing to that mild-medium market in the last year or two, as opposed to the other way around? Remember, everyone wanted that big, bold, spicy cigar. Do you see not just your cigar with the silk, but other factories or other manufacturers going towards that mild-medium market?
Absolutely. Most of these companies already have the big, bold cigar. They've got their medium. It's just You want to fulfill the market. You've got to do it. And some of the brands that have come out recently, Ernie Carrillo with his EPC Wave, Connecticut cigar. We've watched Oliva come out with a Connecticut cigar. Rocky Patel with his 99 vintage. LFD has it. Every one of these companies is coming out with Jaime Garcia.
You know what's funny, though?
Pepin.
One of my favorite Connecticut shade cigars is from Camacho, and it's a Honduran Puro, and that's the Camacho Connecticut 1118.
You know what? Camacho used to be a monster in the industry, and their Corojo and their Maduros and some of the others have kind of gone, I shouldn't say gone by the wayside, but their biggest seller right now is their Connecticut.
By far.
Their Connecticut cigar. And it's a flavorful cigar.
It
Very
is.
flavorful.
Yeah.
I've smoked boxes. It's just
And like I said, and again, it wouldn't be something that I would think you guys would be into, and yet you love them. I know Tim's bought them. I know you've smoked them, and they got flavor. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yeah, you don't want a mild cigar without flavor, and I'm definitely getting some great flavors off this silk. I'm enjoying the Toro tremendously. I like that nutty. I am getting that nuttiness as I get down
One
into
thing,
it.
you mentioned primings a little earlier, and I'd like to touch on that because a lot of people, including myself, I never really thought about it that much. And I had asked them, are all these cigars from first priming? And they said, we don't go by first or second priming.
Now, what is first and second? Is that the relation to the height on the plant? Or
when it's picked,
or in the order that it's picked.
The order that it's picked.
Okay.
It's the order that it's picked.
So they won't. So like when the plant grows and reaches maturity, they won't just pick all the leaves off it. They'll pick one and then let it grow some more and pick another.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
But what Alec Bradley has done, and they're adamant about it. They are really, really sticklers about it. They won't sit. You may have a cigar and it's got first priming. Well, you know what? You get them at a different time of year. It could be a second priming. Everything with them is about texture. In the summertime, in Honduras, you may get 16, 15 hours of sunlight. In the fall, it's down to 8 or 9. So they literally go by the feel and the thickness of that wrapper.
Right.
It could be a first priming, but if you get something that's coming out that was released in October, November, that could be a different priming.
You're kind of touching on a question that's been in my mind when I read about and learn about cigars, and that's given that weather and growing conditions change year by year. How do you make the same cigar every year if there was 6 to 10 inches more rain this year versus the amount of sunlight the plant's getting? Like, how do you keep a consistent blend given so many variables are changing in the tobacco you're putting in it?
That's a problem that
everyone has,
all of those
right?
Central American companies deal with. And Albert Bradley, and I'm going to touch on what I just said earlier, they put more attention into that texture and how that plant, the feel of the plant, and the thickness of that wrapper. Yep. They decide, pull it now. Do it now.
So it's about when you pull the leaves off the
that's
plant,
how they grade
right?
the tobacco. Exactly.
And that's what gives them consistency. Because you know what? We've all done it. How many times have you smoked a cigar, you buy them again, it's 6 months later, you got a new batch come in? They're different.
And you're like, wow, it tastes,
This don't taste the same.
Yeah.
This isn't what I was smoking.
Now, sometimes it's a very sharp contrast. Other times it's very subtle, and I think a lot of people's palates aren't going to pick up on the subtle changes. Certainly my palate wouldn't pick up on some of the very subtle changes. But if there's a sharp contrast, people are going to notice.
They can. They've got incredible. Those tasters are dead on accurate. But, when you start talking about getting 10, 14 inches of rain, there's really so much you can do. I mean, one of the most sought-after cigars right now, other than mine, of course, are the Liga Privada.
Yeah.
Now, Acid Cigars, Jonathan Drew, they got decimated with their Liga crop about 18 months ago, and they've never fully recovered.
Yeah.
It just rained and rained and rained, and it affected what the yield was.
Yeah.
And everybody who is a Liga account, which I am, has gotten our cigars that we've come in are just in such a limited amount now.
Yeah,
I get what a quarter of if that.
And it's funny, we go back to what priming. Take a look at the T52. People want to know where that taste comes from. That's a stalk cut plant. instead of priming a plant, when Steve Saka decides when it's ready to go, they cut the whole plant down as opposed to priming, and that's where
Yeah,
a lot of
right,
different
right,
ways.
They hang them upside down by the stalk, and that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And supposedly the nutrients goes to the leaves at the
Continues
top,
to feed
and
the
that's
plant.
what. Yeah. Interesting. So what was I going to ask about? Construction. So what do you do to ensure that? I mean, we've all had construction issues with all different kinds of cigars. It's a handmade product, obviously, but what are some of the things that you can do to make sure that construction is good and to with your blend and make sure that it's consistent?
The one thing that I am adamant about I could have gone into my own brand maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And the one thing, every time they brought me samples, I found sometimes they were rolled too loosely. Sometimes they'd bring them in, and it's like, wow, they're a little wet. The one thing that I like a firm cigar.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I don't like a real soft cigar. I want them firm.
A little bit of weight to them.
I want some weight, but I want that cigar to be firm. You know, if you're halfway down, God knows we've all smoked them. You get halfway down a cigar, and now it's like a sponge in the middle.
Right.
I simply won't accept those. I will not accept them. When we get brands, Mark and I will open sporadic boxes here and
just
there, sample out of it. That's one thing. They know I want packed cigars. I've done it once before.
Mm-hmm.
I've sent back. I won't say which one. It was a torpedo on one of the lines. Send them back. Said, you know what? Don't care for them. Sent them another time. Mark and I, and just did not like the way they came through. Didn't like them. I said, you know what? I'm not taking them. Send them back. I don't care what you do with them, but they've been tremendous.
Oh, absolutely. I got a question for in any particular order. The three of you can answer this question. The first thing comes to mind is you look at the Ferro Flying Pig. I call that chewy. You smoke it. The smoke just billows out. Too much for me, anyway. I'll start off with Tim. Would you prefer a cigar with bellows and bellows of smoke, or something with a little tighter draw to it?
I'm going to go with the former barrel. Lots of smoke. I like not a loose draw, just the right amount of resistance that pulls nicely. I don't personally like a tight draw.
How about you, Paul?
I don't like a tight draw, but I do not like a loose draw, as Tim said. I like a lot of smoke. Yeah. I really do, because I can smell it, I can taste it.
Right.
But there is a fine line between a firm draw with a lot of smoke and a very loose draw. I don't like a loose draw.
Last but not least, Paul?
If you had asked me this question, like maybe even a couple of months ago, I would have said hands down, I want a cigar that just produces a huge amount of smoke and has a fairly loose draw. But I tell you what, though, I've smoked a few cigars recently that have had way too loose of a draw.
Absolutely.
And it really, for me, takes away from the smoking experience. Like, there's a sweet spot for me. Like, if the draw is too tight or the draw is too loose, it loses its smoking experience. And I think it loses some flavor, too.
That's the
It's
point.
going to burn too hot if it's too loose because the tobacco's burning fast. If it's too tight, it's not going to burn right. And you just get different flavors.
When a cigar burns real fast, it gets hot.
Absolutely.
And every time when it gets hot, there's a bite. I get a taste in the back of my mouth.
Now, too tight. And Tim, I'm going to admit, we made fun of you when you used the term vegetal. But I think that's one of the flavors that you get. It's almost like this vegetable flavor that you get. If the drawer is too tight, it's just the flavors aren't developing. It's not burning right. So there's a definite sweet spot for draw for me.
You know what? The reason that happens is instead of you smoking the cigar, it's like it's smoking you. It's tedious. You're working it. You're working it. I mean, cigar smoking should be kick back, drinking rum or your favorite drink, and it should be enjoyable. And if you got to work a cigar,
it's not fun.
It's not for me.
Yeah, if you have to think about it, if you have to say, well, the draw's loose, so I got to back off it, or the draw's tight, I got to keep puffing on it.
And we were talking about
relighting.
About the construction of the cigar, and that's one of the reasons why with a lot of the Connecticut Ecuadorian grown cigars, as this one is, they put that double binder, and it slows the burn ratio down.
Yeah.
It burns slower. It smokes cool, but you get a ton of flavor, and I'm getting a ton of smoke out of this. It's billowing out, but it's burning beautifully, and it's
Yeah, mine burned very well, and
And
I really like the flavor profile on this cigar. So, Paul, just the last question to kind of wind down here. As far as pairings go, I guess my first question is, what are some of your favorite drinks to pair with cigars, and what would you recommend people pair the silk with?
I would not smoke a silk with a big, full-bodied Scotch. A lot of woodiness, and I would not do that.
Yeah, those heavy, peaty, smoky ones
big,
tend to
peaty
overpower.
smoke.
Yeah.
It's going to overpower this. It's totally going to overpower it. My favorite drink, and I think everybody should drink what they like, but you should be consistent when you're sampling a cigar. Don't drink
That's a good
Scotch
point. I actually
one
heard
day.
your son Tom say
Don't
that the
drink
other day.
water one
Yeah.
time. Don't drink wine. And again, what you've eaten before affects your taste buds.
That's part of the pairing.
That's part of the pairing. You should be very consistent. Myself, I've always been a big fan of rums, dark rums. I believe it or not, I do like that. I love Captain Morgan with Diet Coke. I love coffee also.
Yep,
but
coffee's great
I usually stick with coffee or rum. At least I have something to compare it to. I'm consistent all the time. I know you're a big bourbon and Scotch fan and stuff.
Yeah, you need a heavier cigar. I wouldn't
and
pair
that's
this
fine.
cigar with a bourbon or a Scotch.
Absolutely
Bourbon and
not.
Scotch can be a challenge to pair with. I mean,
I
it
would
really
think
can.
Yeah,
so.
it can be. Yeah,
But I'll tell you what, I think this would be phenomenal in the morning with coffee.
I
Black
agree.
coffee.
I agree. Black
100%
coffee.
my vote.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, if you notice, Paul, I paid a lot of attention to smoking Illusion, the Prensado, and even the Viajes. If you notice, you can, I do anyway, look at the ash. Look how black it is. It's almost like a Cuban type of look of an ash. And then, again, it's almost you can tell
Yeah,
they're all related.
Stogie Santa smoking the J Grotto Reserve Corona Gorda,
which is his favorite.
Yeah, which we featured on the show.
Absolutely.
As soon as we did the sponsorship thing, we said that's the one we're going to smoke because we all, you know what? It's all our favorite cigars.
It's all humidors. So.
Stogie Santa was adamant. He had told me, I don't care what size you go with, but I want a Corona or a Corona Extra. I really want this size.
It's just, I've been looking at them and studying, and it just said, again, it's a signature. You could take the wrappers off them and put down those 3 or 4 different cigars, and they're all going to be different. If you look at the ash, they're all, you can tell they're coming from the same factory. There may be different primings, different tobaccos, but if you look at it, it's a blacker ash, and it's
You
what
know,
does it mean?
the
Not a whole
two-
lot, but you can tell they're coming from the
The
same
two
factory.
Cuban cigars that come to mind when I look at the ash on that reserve, Monte Cristo No. 2 usually has a dark black ash, and I don't know if you when the last time you smoked the original, the old St. Louis Ray Cuban cigars. St.
I've never
Louis
had
Rays,
those, yeah.
the St. Louis Rays had almost a black ash. It was like coal, and they were just delicious. But things change, and you can't. Those cigars from the 90s are gone. They're gone.
Yeah. Well, no, they're still around. You can still get them.
Yeah, and your humidor.
Yeah. No, I had one I'll talk about on the next segment, actually. It's from 1998. It's a Partagas 898 varnish from 1998. It was really good. Yeah, it was very good. So of course, this show, we're sponsored by Ocean State Cigars. You can find out more information currently about the 2 lines, the J Grotto Series and the J Grotto Series Reserve. Are available now. Visit their website, www.oceanstatecigars.com, and you're distributing all over the country.
Yes.
So
Yes,
if your retailer near you doesn't have one, go to the website. There are retailers that sell online.
Absolutely.
And they'll be fulfilling stock. I think one of the ones that I certainly recognize as being somewhat local to New England is Two Guys Smoke Shop, right? And they've got a website where they can you can get your cigars.
2 Guys. Actually, I will be at the Seabrook store next Thursday.
Nice.
I'll be in Manchester, Salem on Saturday. I'm trying to think what the schedule is here.
Because Two Guys moved from Massachusetts to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Right. Tax reasons. They're just over the border from just
Right
geography lesson here. Massachusetts borders right on New Hampshire. So
It's about 90 minutes to the Seabrook store.
Yeah,
They're right.
yeah,
They're
from
right
Rhode
over
Island,
the border.
yeah.
In Salem. They're right over the border.
So on the website, you'll have the listing of all your retailers that carry cigars, is what
Yes.
you're saying. Okay.
Everyone is listed right there. So who's ever closest to you, they're there. You can buy them.
And now there's to speak to events that you're doing. There's a very small event coming up. The tickets are very limited. which I forgot to buy my tickets today, but I will be doing that very soon.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you that we sold out. You won't be joining us this year.
I think I got $5 in my wallet. Hang on.
No, that event is the 20th of June. It's at the Treehouse Bistro, but all tickets do have to be purchased through Mr. J's Havana Shop.
And that's a fabulous. I went to that event last year. That's when you bring your wife to. Like, if there's one cigar event where you're like, honey, I want to go to a cigar event with you. I want to take you with me. That's the one you bring them to.
Yes, the food, everything's really
it's well done.
Top of the line.
Now, are there going to be cigar manufacturers there, or are you going to feature your cigar?
No,
or
on that particular night, that's the, well, put it this way. It's going to be a J Grotto event. I'll leave it at that. Actually, we had the bourbon gentleman in today.
Yeah,
Jefferson. Yeah.
If we're going to be using Jefferson, Mark went over the tastings. We worked out which pairings we would have, which each cigar and stuff. Well, it's going to be a great event.
Fabulous.
I will say this. I know, and I'll say this one last time, this will sell out fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I've got
65
tickets. That's it. Now, the one thing we are going to do, and we haven't gotten the date yet, but if we can get this together, and I think we should, in July, we're going to, the people that like Scotch, we're going to do a Scotch tasting as well. We haven't finalized everything yet. We got to get the logistics down, but with the success of the bourbon one, we're going to follow up with a cigar.
And last but not least, there's going to be the second annual pig roast.
Pig roast, yeah. The pig roast is when you bring your friends to, not your wife. You bring your guy friends.
You can bring your wife.
You can bring your wife. You can.
There's
bring
a pig that's being roasted. It's on a spigot thing.
That's the four-legged pig, right?
Four-legged.
Yeah.
Not the chew. That'll be that's in August.
Yep.
Last year's event was just tremendous, and we pick the ball from there, and this year's event is just going to be so much bigger. We're going to have outside stations for get your beverages. We've got a live band coming in. It's going to be a big event.
Paul, what are some of the manufacturers that's going to be going to that particular pig roast? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, we've got Drew Estate will be coming down. We haven't. They're on a fence yet. We should have a couple representatives from them. We may have a big shot from them. We've got Christoph coming down. Of course, we're going to J Grotto there. The Burger Argente. LFD. We're Flor Dominicana.
Very good. And I think, did you mention also something about the, help me out, Jeremy coming down?
Yep, we've got Don Pepin.
Nice.
We're going to have the Don Pepin cigars there. Jeremy's going to be coming down. Jeremy always does a real nice job there.
Very good.
Like I said, I think we've got about 8 of the 10 manufacturers down. There's a couple. I don't know. It's in August, and we're working on a bourbon tasting right now. But
so they can folks can call the shop and get more information about all the events. If you're local and want to attend an event and hang out, I'm sure Tim and I will try and go to as many of the Mr. J Havana Shop events as we possibly can. And you come down and meet Paul and meet Stogie Santa. So give him a call or check him out on the web. Paul, thank you very much for coming down in the studio.
Thank you very much,
I have
gentlemen.
One last question.
Yes.
When will Silk be released?
Oh, good question, Tim. Thank you.
I know it's a tough question, but I had to ask it.
The cigars were supposed. When you deal with these factories, I found whatever they tell you a release date that you're going to receive them, add another 6 weeks. We were supposed to have these cigars on premise last week of June. April 20th. April 20th became early May. Early May became May 12th. We are now, this should be in granite now. They'll be shipping from Rayasis on the 26th of May. I should have them out of customs, and I should have them in my store. The first thing my son and Stogie Santa and myself are going to do, we're going to sample immediately when they come in. But it's safe to say I'm not releasing till we think. I'm not interested in releasing a cigar that's real good. We want to release it when it's spectacular. My gut feeling is it'll probably be, I'd say maybe late June. Late June probably is a safe, and that's going to, you can pretty much take that.
Excellent.
We'll be certain to announce it here once you
Absolutely.
But a few individuals like you and Tim are going to get to. That's one thing I do have to say. You've got the prototype. You've got the original releases in your hand. But I'm going to ask those cigars that you have right now.
Holding them up from the camera now for our live viewers.
Right now, about 6 weeks of age. I'm going to ask that you do not smoke them for at least a month. And I know you'll do that. I mean, it'll be something you'll do at a later time.
What? Oh.
Fail.
Forgot what I just said.
I don't know. I got to disagree
just
with
look-
Paul.
they
That
look so-
reserve is ready to smoke now.
They look so tempting. They look fabulous. They do.
I will say,
It's a very nice presentation.
we
of the
smoked,
Lancero.
Mark and I
What's the
smoked-
ring? What's the ring gauge on these Lanceros and the length?
That's a 40 ring gauge.
Okay.
I really do like the 40 compared
Yeah,
to
to the 38.
To the
Yeah,
38.
easy to get
agree.
that tobacco
38's a
in
little
there.
dainty.
I
Yeah.
find 38s. I really love. I find the 40 ring gauge such a finesse cigar. You know, if you're dressed
absolutely.
up and you're out somewhere.
Yeah,
I know
agree.
Mark wants to release the reserves right away. We smoked them and he just loved them.
They're
We both. I will say one thing, Mark, from 2 weeks ago, the Silk Lancero, which was a little green. I see a difference in 2 weeks already.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
already 2 weeks have smoothed out and rounded out already, and this cigar is just going to continue to morph into what we know it's going to be.
Right. Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you,
You're
Paul.
very, very welcome.
And with that, we'll cut to a break here, and we'll come back. We're going to get resituated, and we're going to talk about our. We got a lot of smokes to talk about this
Been
week.
2 weeks, so
Yeah, so we've got a lot of smokes to talk about. So we'll be back.